and let us all do we can to build a better future.
Yeah, Chris Hedges came out with an op-ed yesterday that I thought was really interesting. And you know what's really funny is there are some shows that we do together where I'm like, there's a total theme to today's show. And this was the first story that I turned in. It was the first story that was up on our Slack today. And then the 3 subsequent stories, in my opinion, are like macro examples or micro examples of this sort of like macro idea, which I thought was really coincidental and really funny. So with that sort of in the background, I'll go ahead and give you what Chris Hedges had to say about his extremely hope-free stance on where we're headed as a nation. Notice, not hopeless, not hopeful, but hope-free. And he says the competing systems of power in the United States are divided between oligarchy and autocracy. There are no other alternatives. And you know, again, we could say that's pessimistic. We could go on the optimistic side and say, no, there's some hope. But then there's this whole conversation of like depending on hope to save us, and
hope is the first pass of disappointment.
And I'm just I just want to keep everybody in that hope-free space, mostly because I think it's when we sit in hopefulness or hopelessness that we start to make people messianic figures. It's when we start to really like, you know, tear things down because there is some like crashing of hope or expectation.
I would even say that hope, good, and evil are entirely useless things to focus on in any, because you're just pulling your own personal point of view in your own individual life into an idea or a concept. It doesn't exist. It's just an opinion based on a perspective of one person or a group.
That's awesome.
It's not useful to include it.
Absolutely. I love that. So this is what Chris Hedges is saying, that we're basically headed toward oligarchy, which I would say that that's what we're dealing with.
I would say,
where are we here?
That's where we are right now.
I was going to say headed towards.
Yeah.
Come on, Chris. No, we like your work. We like your work.
Competing systems of power. So I guess he's not saying we're headed toward there. I guess he's saying we are there.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's just how I had digested it. The oligarchs from the establishment Republican Party, so we have figures he lists like Liz Cheney, Mitt Romney, George and Jeb Bush, Bill Kristol, have joined forces with the oligarchs of the Democratic Party, people like Bill Gates, the Obamas, the Clintons, to defy the autocrats in the new Republican Party who have coalesced in cult-like fashion around Donald Trump, or if he doesn't run again for president, his inevitable doppelganger.
Somebody like
What was the guy, Donald Ganger?
I love it, the Donald Ganger.
The Donald Ganger. I'm not the Donald Ganger.
I'm not orange, I'm yellow.
I'm the Donald Ganger.
Okay.
I love it. So oligarchs come from the traditional nexus of elite schools, inherited money, the military, and corporations. The word oligarchy is derived from the Greek word oligos, meaning a few, and it is the oligos that sees power and wealth as its birthright, which they pass on to their family and their children.
By the way, if you go back, so when we say democracy, we're pulling that mainly from the Greeks. And the Greeks, when you ask the Greeks about democracy, they would explain it as an oligarchy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep, okay. The word autocracy is derived from the Greek word auto, meaning self, as in one who rules by himself. Although if there is a serious threat of socialism or left-wing radicalism, the oligarchs form an uncomfortable alliance with the autocrat and his henchmen to crush it. So that's what we saw happen most recently with Bernie Sanders run in the primaries for the Democratic ticket. So,
or any other progressive candidate.
or any progressive, progressive candidate.
Case in point, I want to bring this up. When Ginger Jensen for Socialist Alternative was running for the councilwoman seat in Minneapolis,
and that was ranked choice.
Yeah, it was ranked choice voting, but you had the Democrats and Republicans working together just so that she could
there you
lose
go.
that
That's
race.
a perfect example.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
And that was for a council seat. Not Senate, not state level or federal. That was for council seat for a city.
That's a great example. And now the liberal class, fearing autocracy, has thrown in its lot with the oligarchs. So we see this like with the romanticizing of figures like George W. Bush. It's like we forgot that he was like the worst president in most of our lifetimes.
He was rehabilitated. He's dancing with Ellen. Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
Michelle Obama's giving him hugs.
Anybody can be reformed if they're dance with Ellen.
Wait for Trump's reform. It's going to be funny.
Yeah. Oh, God. Oh, Trump dancing with Ellen. I want to see that. So, rendering impotent the causes and issues they claim to champion. The bankruptcy of the liberal class is super important because it effectively turns liberal democratic values into the empty platitudes that those who embrace the autocracy condemn and despise. So it's all part of the plan, right? Is like, again, and just, if this is going over anybody's head, because maybe you're not like an auditory learner or whatever, basically what we're saying is like, they point out these platitudes to the people who are following the autocrat, like Trump voters, and they say, oh, see, like, look at that liberal. They want this, they want this, they want this, and all the while they're going to take from you, right? And so it creates this whole divide where there probably wouldn't be one without this sort of two-power system struggle.
Yeah. Meanwhile, China's like, hey guys, we're doing okay, taking over in trade. Everyone's working with us. We seem rather rational compared to the U.S., which is just going absolutely nuts. I think my take has always been, as I've become kind of more and more understanding of this exact kind of argument and discussion, is I think the only real time where this math changes is when we're no longer an empire. This is through and through empire realities that we're seeing and acting out right now.
Right. That's a great point too. You guys are so smart.
Yeah. Because I want you to continue because I want to bring up an example of a decaying empire that never even recovered. But
right on. Okay, cool. So the result being that they often outdo the policies of the autocracy. And so Hedges goes into a bunch of different examples here, and I just wanted to highlight them just because this is it's very high level philosophical. But when you actually look at what's going on, you see, like, quite literally the parallel between what he is saying and what's actually happening in real time. So, the Trump administration, for example, expelled 444,000 asylum seekers under Title 42, a law that permits the immediate expulsion of those who potentially pose a public health risk and deny the expelled migrants the right to make a case to stay in the U.S. before an immigration judge. The Biden administration not only embraced the Trump order in the name of fighting the pandemic, but has also thrown out more than 690,000 asylum seekers. So 444,000 under the Trump administration. What is that, 4 years long?
Okay. Since
January, 690,000.
Wow.
Okay, and we're in month almost 10 of 2021.
Yes.
The Biden administration has opened up 80 million acres for oil and gas drilling in the Gulf of Mexico and boasted that the sale will produce 1.12 billion barrels of oil over the next 50 years. It has bombed Syria and Iraq, and on the way out the door in Afghanistan, murdered 10 civilians, including 7 children, in a drone strike. It has ended 3 pandemic relief programs. So it's going to be throwing people on the street, cutting off people's income.
People being evicted from their homes. Biden's campaign talk of raising the minimum wage. Let it sink in. Forgiving student debt. Let it sink in. Immigration reform. And making housing a human right has all been forgotten. At the same time, the Democratic leadership proponents of a new Cold War with China and Russia has authorized provocative military maneuvers along Russia's borders and in the South China Sea, and it speeded up production of its long-range B-21 Raider stealth bombers. So oligarchies engage in lies that are often far more destructive to the public than the lies of a narcissist autocrat. Yet the absence of an ideology among the oligarchs give to oligarchic rule a flexibility lacking in autocratic forms of power, whereas an autocracy is not pliable. It's only based on the adulation of the autocrat himself or herself, no matter how absurd basically the fear of offending him or her. Okay? So easier to read, just plain sight, lies, whereas we have the oligarchy that can be a lot more dangerous because everything is a little gooey around the edges, right? There's no actual like parameters or rules or red lines that are for real, right? And it is ironically the oligarchs who build the institutions of oppression, the militarized police, the dysfunctional courts, the raft of anti-terrorism laws used against dissidents, ruling through executive orders rather than legislative processes, wholesale surveillance, and promulgation of laws that overturn the most basic constitutional rights by judicial fiat. The oligarchs do not use these mechanisms of oppression with the same ferocity as the autocrats, however. They employ them fitfully and therefore ineffectually.
Yeah.
But they create the physical and legal systems of oppression so that an autocrat, with the flick of a switch, can establish a de facto dictatorship.
It's exactly. Everyone was like freaking out. Oh, Trump's doing this immigration, and we're like, yeah, you have the thing Obama. It's a great way to put it. Because it's like they need each other so much. The oligarchs are needed because they create all the gray area and opportunity for people to act in an autocratic way, and then autocrats act in that way, and then oligarchs come back and go, well, we need to give more power to stuff to make that harder to happen, which of course makes it easier to happen. Oligarchs create the potential for misuse of power, and then oligarchs do that, and autocrats actually use it.
Yeah. And the thing is, when it comes down to it, if we look at where the United States is going, our decline is so embarrassingly similar to Byzantium, to the Byzantine Empire. Now, I know. That's an empire that fell many, many, many centuries ago.
And ironically, when it fell, it also marked the end of the era of the Mediterranean power and opened it up to the Middle East and Europe, whereas the end of the American power marks the end of the dominance of Europeans as a powerhouse.
And I want to bring this up because, again, Byzantium kept on declining further and further. The top 1% began getting more and more control, more corruption, which led to the rise of more dictators. And again, its fate was similar to Rome. But again, looking at Byzantium, just what happened as it started shrinking, as it started failing with its great projects, its infrastructure was falling apart, till all that remained of that great empire of what was once called Rome was nothing but the city of Constantinople, which then fell to the Ottoman Turks. Now, the thing is, empires just don't fall overnight. It's a gradual decline. If we look at the United States, we keep on embracing corruption. And the thing is, our Supreme Court opened the door, thanks to Citizens United and the McCutcheon decision, where money is speech and corporations are people, to where anyone can buy our politicians. Not just Russia, but anybody with money.
Which was passed under the oligarch, not the autocrat.
Yes. And by the way, again, let's look at what the Obama administration did. They were able to create a lot of situations to where someone like Trump can take advantage of
100%.
Again, Obama got rid of habeas corpus, not Trump. Obama was the one who was building those cages south of the border, not Trump. It's Obama that led us from 2 wars to 7 wars, not Trump. Look, I understand everyone's triggered by Trump. I didn't want to see him get reelected. I don't want to see him get elected in 2016. But the thing is, when you have such inept political leaders in the Democrat and Republican Party, you're going to open a doorway for somebody like Trump. And the very fact that Bernie Sanders didn't have the testicular fortitude and the backbone to actually push back against the Democratic establishment says that maybe this entire political system is a lost cause. Now, we could avoid this path, but what needs to be done is for the American people right now to step up, because no relief is coming from our politicians. They abandoned us in 2020. Your favorite Democratic and Republican lawmakers abandoned you. They don't care about you.
Nope.
So if you're a diehard Democratic and Republican voter, look, I get it. I get why you like Team Red and Team Blue. I understand. It makes you feel comfortable, or you couldn't fathom voting third party. But know this, no matter what happens, no matter what your favorite politician says to you, be it a Democrat or Republican, you will never, ever, ever have a seat at the table. You are not their number one concern. Whatever they say to you, they say it because they know it will placate you. Mm-hmm. You've been fooled. You've been swindled. You've been bamboozled. You've been tricked. I don't know how else can say it, but you were tricked. If you think you are always going to be in your politician's back of the mind, in their heart, you're lying to yourself. I'm so sorry it took this long to convince you, but if you're voting Democrat or Republican, know this. those lawmakers will say, good little puppet, as they continue screwing you over.
And it does, gosh, my brain just went in like 5 different directions all at once as I started talking because I was trying to beat Daniel to talking. Anyway. So the voting thing, yes, stop voting for the duopoly. It is a dead end, it is a lost cause, it is just more and more of this like back and forth circle jerk, right? Mm-hmm. And I also just want to point out that that's why we do a show like this, right? And hopefully all of you all are sharing this kind of content because I think it's really important to get this kind of messaging out there. You don't see anybody in our establishment media, on television, and even in a lot of outlets on the internet, talking specifically about this issue. And so frequently it is framed under the guise of, pro-establishment or alt-right. I feel like it's like those two options right now. And so, we have this very strong like left independent media coming out of the woodwork on the internet, us being one of those outlets, and we are screaming from the mountaintops, like, look at what's happening, stop playing inside of these parameters that have been set up for us to oppress us and to rule over all of us.
It's like, here's another way to think of it as well. It's like the Republicans are the people that want to bulldoze your house. The Democrats are the people that build bulldozers, tires, make those teeth attachments, make the teeth stronger, and make the fuel. And they just pass control of who gets to have that
That's
stuff
right.
from one person to another. That's the whole idea. That's the ping pong game. Every time it goes back and forth, more people die more easily each time.
Yeah.
Yep. And let's see how does Chris Hedges conclude this? So he says we must defy the oligarchs as well as the autocrats. If we replicate the cowardice of the liberal class, we will sell out to the oligarchs as a way to blunt the rise of autocracy. We will discredit the core values of a civil society and fuel the very autocracy we seek to defeat.
That pretty much, it's hard to top that answer, but I'll never forget in 2016 when we were first getting started, I had a chance to interview Cornel West and also to some extent Chris Hedges. And I'll never forget Chris Hedges' words on how Bernie Sanders sold out the movement by again, bending over backwards for the Clinton campaign. So, Final note, we have 2 choices, according to Chris Hedges, but there's a third choice, I'll say. It's up to us. Don't be that person who says that they wish they could help.
I would say that on top of that, I think there's 2 ways of looking at this, and I try to incorporate both ways. And that's sort of why Hard Lens exists, is I never thought when we first started Hard Lens, and when I talked with Kit, I never thought that Hard Lens would change 2020 or 2024. What I did say is we will eventually make a difference after enough time. All these progressive groups are, but right now, it's sort of already like everything that we're fighting right now was already put in motion 60 years ago when Reagan got into office.
Yeah.
When the Democrats sold themselves out and became just like the Republicans. We're right now in an era watching that play out. And what is it going to, and it's crazy. It's like that, when did all that happen? When did that switch to the Democrat? Like what, 20 years after we became the world's hyperpower? Like we have, just like that.
Reagan was elected 40 years ago was Reagan.
Yeah, but I'm saying that all the pieces, like the fact that we became the world's hyperpower it's like I very much look at all of this and no different than I would look at the gravity of a moon or a planet or a star. I see all this as a lot of people give too much agency to humans, and I think we're incredibly reactive naturally. And so the reason all of this is happening is because we were the only country that really wasn't destroyed in World War II, and we had so much everything. We basically took over the planet and made us Rome. We were the new Rome. Everything led to us, and we built our systems around it, and those systems always are oligarchy and autocracy. They will always be that, and it was just the fact that we won so big is what actually destroyed us, because inevitably everyone started taking advantage of our amount of power. That's not going to last forever. We are the strongest, most powerful, most widespread empire ever on the planet's history. I always look at it like, if you look at the map of the Cold War, all the blue countries, and then the bad Soviet countries.
Red, yeah.
All the blue countries, those are our colonies. Europe is our colony. We own them through the Marshall Plan. We owe them through the way that trade works, the fact that we rebuilt them. We were the only people that trade with them. The fact that we've claimed South America, the way that we controlled Africa, the way that, for a lot of the case, China was taken over, except, like every empire, we create our own enemies. We made China what it is today. We're the people that gave China the ability to overthrow us. Good job, us. But it was inevitable, because this is how empires always function. Find any empire in history, and you will see they always act the same way. They always turn to oligarchy, and they always turn to autocracy. It's the natural outcome of any of these places, regardless of the context of anything else. So all we're doing right now is watching this play out, inevitably fall apart, and we have to be the thing that rises from those burnt ashes. That is the goal of not only Hard Lens Media, but 99 Perspectives, is to try and do what we can to inform people now and then be there to rebuild after.
So the big takeaway from this, folks, you are the answer and that need to fight for that better future. And you are the one that's going to have to lead the way, because the politicians won't do it.